It's been 6 long months, but the time has finally arrived. We've officially hit the opening week of the Overwatch League's 4th year. It also marks the 3rd year of this prediction series. It has become a staple here on the channel, and I really couldn't imagine having a season without them. From now until the end of this year, I'm going to be giving my predictions for every single game of every single week, including tournament and playoff matches. For each game, I'll give an overview of what I think alongside a final score prediction. In these overviews, I'll discuss key factors of the game, such as specific player matchups and other team details that I believe should be brought up. I may bring up storylines to pay attention to as well if I find it necessary. Another thing I like to do in these videos is highlight key matches of the week which I believe we should be paying extra attention to. The reason I make a game a key match is going to vary. At the start of a new week, I will quickly give my thoughts on the results of these key matches just to see how things went and if anything in particular surprised me. The final thing I like to do in these types of videos is predict what I think the meta is going to be. This won't be a part of every video, only when we hit the start of a new stage or when hero pools get implemented. And because some people care about it, I will always leave a pinned comment going over my record for the week and on the year starting next week. But that's basically everything you need to know, so without wasting any more time, let's get some predictions going. So to start with some quick thoughts on the meta, it's pretty clear that Rush is going to be the primary composition being played. Everybody's playing it right now. There might be some variation depending on the region and what teams are comfortable playing, but you should expect to see a lot of those brawly types of comps. Now let's get into the games. So starting us off on Friday will be the Battle of Texas, which will be the first key match of the week. If this was a few months ago, I probably would have said this is no contest in favor of the Fuel, but things have lined up in a way where this could be a surprisingly good matchup. The meta has shifted towards Rush, which greatly favors the Houston Outlaws. Part of the reason I put them so low in my power rankings has to do with Chengdu and Piggy only really being good in certain situations. But it just so happens that we are now in one of those specific scenarios. They were known for their Reinhardt-Zarya combination back in Contenders, so combine a tank line who won't get totally dominated with a DPS rotation who could be deadly on a weekly basis, and you have a potential recipe for success. I especially think Houston could grab the advantage on Mei, since Sparkle and Doha both are incredible on her in my opinion. But even so, it still won't be easy because I actually think Dallas could be respectable in a Rush comp as well. I am confident that Fearless and Hanbin can match Chengdu and Piggy, and I would argue that the Dallas support line is stronger, but there is a major hole that could be presenting itself on the side of Dallas. They have a void to fill at DPS with the sudden retirement of Xe. While they settle into their new situation, the DPS could be sent into disarray. Happy is no joke. The Fuel's odds of keeping him in check have gone way down. To counter an elite sniper, you have to be one yourself. The Dallas hit scan situation could be a disaster. Happy and those boys on Houston might take advantage of this big time. Despite Dallas being better equipped for long-term success, Houston could make for a tough situational opponent because of this meta alone. So when you factor in the Xe retirement now, Houston might give them all they could possibly handle. Alright, so who gets the W? I could see this one going either way, no doubt about it. I've honestly seen a lot of people say Houston will pull off the upset, and the current situation makes it feel reasonable. Before the Xe situation came into light, I had Dallas taking it in a close game, but now things are different. I am concerned this team will struggle right out of the gate. A slow start could be imminent simply because they are lacking a hit scan who A, is solid at the characters it needs to play, and B, is not totally new to the roster. I can't believe I'm going down this path, but I'm picking the Outlaws to take the Fuel out in 5 maps. It's opening week and Houston is in a good meta, so I could totally see this being a close game. Neither franchise has ever been what you'd call trustworthy, but Houston feel to me like the better of two evils given the current situation the Fuel are dealing with. Under normal circumstances, I'm going with the Fuel all day, but this is not a normal circumstance by any means, and I'm very worried. The other matchup in the opening day doubleheader is the LA Gladiators versus the defending champion, San Francisco Shock. You already know, this is another key match. There's so many fun storylines here. Right away we get to see if the Gladiators are legit. Not only that, but we get to see the rookie debut of Muse, Moth playing his former team, and Glister's first match on the Shock. I find this game interesting because the meta could suit both teams. The Super Reinhardt is iconic, but Muse is no slouch on the character himself. What's interesting is that both teams have a top tier support line and explosive DPS. There's two big factors that I think decide this game. One is the main tank matchup. If Super and or Smurf assert their dominance over Muse, the Shock gain the advantage. But the Gladiators have a chance to strike back at DPS potentially. The Shock have been spoiled by a god tier Mei from Rascal, but now he's gone, so who's going to step up? Could anybody be in the same stratosphere on this roster? So if we do see a fair amount of Mei, maybe somebody like Kevster could gain the advantage in the flex DPS department. Generally speaking, I'm expecting this to be a close game, and it's not just because of the rosters. Historically, the Shock do have slow starts to their season. Remember in Season 2 when the Gladiators took them down? Or what about last year when the Fuel gave them a run for their money on opening day, or when both LA teams beat them back to back? It's hard to go against history. I believe the Shock will once again not play at 100% from the start, resulting in the Gladiators really pushing them. However, I am still rolling with San Fran in a 3-2 victory. My gut feeling is that Super and or Smurf, probably Super though given the situation, will outplay Muse, kind of like how Fissure did against Roar back in Season 2. Along with that, I think Krusty simply outcoaches his opposition with better late game adaptations to get the W. Moving on to Saturday, we start off the day with the Shanghai Dragons versus the Guangzhou Charge. I'll be honest, I'm not expecting much out of this one. I'm not very high on the Charge this year, and they're going against the #1 team in Asia, at least the projected #1 team. The Charge have pretty much zero advantages, and they're only comparable at flex DPS, off tank, and maybe flex support. The Dragons just feel so much better at the other positions. As much as I love Mike Lee, I could totally see Lip and or Diem absolutely torching him. He's not going to have the room to pop off like the other two. He's not even necessarily a much worse player. I just think he's in the worst situation. And despite Mondu being a pretty good Lucio, he doesn't quite hold a candle to Lee Jae Gun in my opinion. If the Charge are even going to make this one interesting, Eileen and Krung are going to have to show up big time, and Karif needs to have one of his famous performances where he plays out of his mind. All of that combined though, that still might not be enough. So I'm going to give this to the Dragons in a clean sweep. There's too much for the Charge to overcome. They kind of need to just build up their confidence a bit and their synergy before they're ready for Shanghai. Filling out Saturday Asia game number 2 is the Valiant versus the Hunters. This one is a key match, but mostly because we're all just really curious about the Valiant. How bad will this group be? Some people think they'll be lucky to even win a game. Others believe they'll be competitive. If it weren't for the mystery factor, this game wouldn't even be on our radar. But I mean, come on, this is going to be so great. There's some major meme potential in the works here. On a serious note, this is Chengdu's game to lose. They hold all the cards. If they lose this game, it's more than likely going to be on them because they are so much better on paper. They have an actual main support and a far better tank line, and I'm fully expecting Gaga in particular to dominate. I don't give Silver 3 or Hybe much of a chance at all, and if those guys are having a hard time, that is going to make the life of Crystal a lot more difficult, resulting in him not being able to do much of anything at all. Speaking of Crystal, it should be interesting to see him back in the league and playing against Leave, who was a former teammate of his back in the World Cup days. Leave versus Crystal should be a fun matchup if we get to see it. But again, I fully expect Leave to get the better of him due to the overall team difference. The Hunter should win this 3-0. I would be nice and give the Valiant a pity map, but I completely lack optimism. Unless the Hunters play like trash, it should be a pretty easy win. Transitioning to the third matchup of Asia during Saturday, we have more of an interesting game to discuss. The Fusion take on the Seoul Dynasty in a Final Four salty run back. Seoul absolutely embarrassed them in that elimination game, and you'd have to imagine that some of those Philly players are dying to get their revenge and blow off some steam. This will also be one of my key matches of the week. There's so many different interest factors that draws you towards this particular matchup. Can Philly pick up from where they left off in 2020? Can the Seoul Dynasty prove the haters wrong? And what about Philly's new team? Poco and Funny Astro aren't available due to visa issues in case you didn't know, so now Hoppa and Toby are on the team and they're suddenly being thrown into a situation that they might not be totally comfortable with. You'd have to imagine that they have not been with the team for all that long, and that could be a problem. I have confidence in Toby as a player, and I'm very happy to see him back in the league, but it takes time to build up synergy on a brand new team. Maybe he'll play out of his mind because he's up against his old team, but I kind of have my doubts for the current moment in time. I am more so worried about Hoppa though. He just did not look good with Mono last year. Their styles were not all that compatible, and Hotba generally made a lot of individual mistakes. Why should I believe he's suddenly going to do a lot better? Nobody wanted him over the offseason, and you would have to imagine Philly only signed him because they were desperate, and he at least kind of made sense due to his previous experiences with both the Fusion and Mono. I want to give Hotba another chance, but I'm reluctant to because everything is moving so fast. If he had gotten signed at the beginning of the offseason, I would be a bit more willing to, but this feels pretty last second. I highly doubt he's been with the team for any longer than like 2 months, and that makes him a potential weak link. If Philly are going to win this game, it's going to come through their strong points. Carpe, Alarm, Mono, and Rascal will have to pick up the slack, which is very well possible. They're all hard carry players. But deep down, I feel they're going to be more disorganized than Seoul, who have been practicing all together for a much longer period of time. Philly are the better overall team. On paper, they should win this, and if they were at full strength, then I definitely would have given this to them. Their superstars are stronger, but context matters. If Toby and Hotba aren't totally comfortable like I think they'll be, that'll make the rest of the team suffer, which gives the Dynasty the chance they need to steal this one away simply by playing cleaner. That is why I am picking the Seoul Dynasty to win this game in 5 maps. In all honesty, the Fusion definitely could win this. I genuinely do believe they're a better team in the long term, but right now, some things feel unclear and the Dynasty tend to play well in season openers. Philly's play will improve as the season progresses, so don't get used to me saying Seoul has the advantage. Moving back into the NA side of things, we kick off Saturday with a Canadian showdown, or maybe showdown isn't the best word to describe it. The Titans are viewed as a bottom 2 team in the league by most, and Toronto have decent upside. This is not what you'd call a fair matchup. I mean, just do a quick comparison of the rosters. Where do the Titans really stack up? Maybe at off-tank? Flex DPS? Maybe? I don't see where they gain any kind of leg up on their opponents whatsoever. Sato is light years ahead of Shredlock, especially in a Reinhardt meta. Rolf, he doesn't really stand a chance against Lastro, let's call it how it is, and think about the mismatch that presents itself at DPS. Linkser and or Dalton will be at the mercy of Hisu. Even Logix could be better than both of them, and if Mei is the play, I am deeply concerned over who plays it on Vancouver. I feel that Taro is not so known for his Mei, and Dalton is not that great on her either. The Defiant take it 3-0. I don't give the Titans much of a chance at all. I really don't, and it's a shame that this could probably become a pretty common consensus throughout the season unless I gravely misjudged this roster. The next Saturday game will be between the Atlanta Reign and Florida Mayhem. Honestly, I'm not too sure how I feel about it. There's some general things to look forward to, like Slime and OG getting another opportunity, or seeing if Kai can carry under a new system. It should be fun to watch. But will this be a good game? Generally speaking, Florida, in my opinion, is the better team, but the Reign DPS could be a major thorn on their sides. Kai on the McCree is always going to give you trouble. Or if it's like Widow, Ashe, whatever he plays, he's going to carry on it. And honestly, Pelican could be pretty nasty as well. Yaki's Mei and some of his other projectile heroes, they're pretty good, but not unbeatable. So, if these two play well enough, maybe the Reign can make this interesting. But I feel like some other stuff needs to go their way. Everybody else needs to do enough. And that could be problematic because in my opinion, they have a few sizable disadvantages to overcome. For one, Gargoyle absolutely outclasses Hawk. I also generally prefer Game Namjin over Iris. Iris is unproven and Game Namjin could be a top 5 flex support in the league potentially. It's not to say that Iris has no shot of keeping up, I just think it's kind of unlikely. The other positions I don't feel comfortable judging. It's kind of a wash at main tank and main support as far as I'm concerned. So just going off the things I know, I prefer the Mayhem. I have them winning the series 3 maps to 1. The DPS feel pretty evenly matched, so I don't feel like Atlanta will be able to take over this game completely. They definitely do have a shot at pulling off the upset, but I don't trust them anywhere outside of DPS. Florida just have more weapons. If Atlanta are going to win this game, they have to find a way to neutralize them. That's a big win condition to overcome, so it's Florida's game to lose, clearly. Closing out Saturday is the Gladiators and Dallas game, which will be my final key match of the week. 2 potential NA juggernauts going head-to-head has to grab your attention. There's a lot of star power in one lobby, and both teams could be relatively solid at rush. I think this game comes down to where you put your stocks. Are you somebody who thinks Dallas is going to have the upper hand due to their tank line, or do you prefer the Gladiators because of their supports? How I think of it is who can do more at a disadvantage. For me personally, it's the Gladiators, who I think are generally the better overall team. Space and Muse could definitely have a hard time against Hanbin and Fearless, but because Space is a proven veteran who I know can hang in there with the best, and those boys have such a reliable supporting cast, I trust them to do enough. I expect Dallas to crumble harder at the places where they don't hold up so well. I genuinely do believe that Moth will have a much better game than Jexay as well. And if Jexay can't can't do well, then that puts more pressure on Fielder to perform, and he already has enough on his plate as it is due to the individual matchup with Shu. But the thing that ultimately decides this one for me is the sizable advantage that Birdring is now going to have. With Xe now gone, nobody should be able to stop him. The Gladiators win the set 3-1. Originally, I was expecting this to be a bit closer, but now Dallas have another disadvantage on their hands that they really can't afford to have. Now on to Sunday, where we start things off with the Dynasty versus the Charge. After all that happened last year, I am always nervous to pick the Dynasty to go on any sort of win streak. This feels like one of those classic trap games where Seoul start strong, then randomly decide to suck. But for now, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's a new year, so maybe they changed at least a little bit, and if that's the case, they should be able to defeat the Charge. In all honesty, I prefer Seoul as a team. They're just in a better spot overall. I especially give them the edge if Rein Zarya is played. It just suits them better. Rein Zarya is, in my opinion, the worst possible tank combination for the Charge. They aren't garbage or anything, I just think they're better in double shield or dive. Meanwhile, Tuyu on Zarya, it's pretty terrifying. If you saw what this guy did in the Gauntlet, then you know what I'm talking about. He's a true difference maker on this hero, and that might be enough for him to stand up to Krong. And it doesn't even end there if you're the Charge. Much like with the Shanghai matchup, I also believe the Charge will need their rookies to step up if they want to have a shot of making this game interesting or maybe winning it, because Eileen simply cannot do this on his own, and this is going to especially be the case if he has to play a lot of Mei. I'm kind of worried the Charge rookies might not be ready for this yet, especially because they're going up against some of the veterans of the game that Seoul possesses, so in my opinion the Dynasty will take this series 3-1. The only real concern I have about Seoul is how Creative is going to do off of Ana, but they're in great shape if that's the only disadvantage they're possibly dealing with. Moving onward, we have the Dragons taking on the Hunters. Time to see what Chengdu are made of early on. Let's see if their improvements over the offseason mean anything in the grand scheme of things. If the Hunters can put up a good fight, that's a great sign if you're a Chengdu fan. But can they do it? I mean, it doesn't look great. It's not Chengdu's fault or anything, I just think Shanghai are kind of just in a league of their own. You can't really expect Elsa to do much against Void, and there's no way Nisha could even dream of keeping up with Lee Jae-gon. But even so, I kind of have high hopes for the Hunters to at least make this series kind of interesting. I have absolutely no proof this is going to happen. I just have a good feeling about Gaga. It might not be to the same magnitude, but I could totally see him having an Among against the Titans type of game. Gaga is so insanely talented, and this might be his coming out game. The Hunters DPS line, maybe they could make things interesting too. They're a promising group who might catch the Dragons off guard, especially if Chengdu decide to try out some wacky strategies like they usually do. But ultimately, their efforts won't be enough. The Dragons win in 4 maps. Their superior talent will simply be too much to handle. It won't be like at the beginning of Season 3. Shanghai aren't going to fall into the same trap. There's no random Wrecking Ball stuff going on this time. They've got this. Closing out Asia for the week will be the Philly Fusion versus the LA Valiant. Despite any rumors you might have heard, it does not change the fact that the Valiant are terrible. Even with some roster issues in mind, the Fusion are the clear favorites, and it's not even up for debate. Even Hotba could roll this game, and if Philly's biggest potential weakness has a chance to dominate, then the Valiant are in for one heck of a battle. The Fusion aren't going to hold back anything like they might have done in scrims. This is the real deal, and if that's the case, you'd have to imagine they take care of business here. Philly takes it in a sweep. I refuse to believe they're going to lose to the Valiant with that much talent. The Fusion would have to look beyond lost out there. I mean, the internal struggle would have to be absurdly taxing. The Valiant will be catching Philly at a bad time. If my Soul Game prediction comes true, then those boys will be angry, and the Valiant are going to make for the perfect punching bag. Starting off my final day of NA matches, the Shock play the Outlaws. If I'm going to be honest, I think the Outlaws are going to ride a high this week. They seem pretty confident right now, and if they play Dallas hard or even beat them, they might play up to their competition really good here. It's a great meta for them, and the Shock historically are not that amazing at the start of the season. There's upset potential here. Now granted, the odds of them actually pulling it off is tiny, but it could be a trap game for the Shock if they don't take their opponent seriously. I'm not going against the Shock though. Regardless of what history has shown us, it's difficult to imagine them blowing a game to the Outlaws. I know Choi is not the best Zarya out there, but he's still a veteran who could very easily get the better of Piggy through his experience alone. I know the Shock won't be as good at Rush without Rascal, but Striker and Glister both have explosive potential. And think about where they excel. Words can't even begin to describe how badly their support line outclasses Juby and Crimzo. That alone probably makes the Shock win this game. San Fran take it 3-1. Again, because I believe Houston are riding a high, they'll maybe take a map or something. Maybe they take advantage of a map the Shock aren't that great at, or perhaps Dante, Happy, or somebody else goes absolutely crazy. But in the end, I don't think it's enough. San Francisco are the defending champs. There's no way they lie down and let a middle-of-the-pack team at best beat them. Next up, the Mayhem take on the Titans, and it's looking like Florida could get off to a nice start this weekend. Two very winnable games back-to-back. There's not really much else to say. Apply Vancouver's problems with Toronto to this game. It's the same thing. They're in bad shape in the May and flex support departments, and I'm expecting massive games out of Yaki and Game Jin as a result. But I mean, generally speaking, the Mayhem just have a step up literally everywhere. There's not much reason to talk about this. I predict the Mayhem take it in a sweep. I'm not expecting the Titans to win many games this year. There's way too much mediocrity going on that roster and not enough star power. Unless some of their pieces from last year progress and I'm just severely misjudging them, they'll need a much weaker opponent than this if they're hoping to get a W. And last, but certainly not least, is a showdown between the Atlanta Reign and Toronto Defiant. Now this is a great way to end the week. Two mid-tier teams around the same level, I would say. I'm 50-50 on who I think wins. I actually kind of prefer the Atlanta DPS over Toronto's. Kai, Pelican, and maybe Edison, I guess, could be in for a great game. And that might be all it takes, really, because as we all know, Kai can deadlift when he gets into the zone, and it also helps that the Reign won't be at the same general disadvantages they're facing with Florida. Sure, Sato is noticeably better than Gator, but Hawk could hold his own against Michelle, and I could totally see Masa outplaying Ansun J. I honestly don't know what to think. It's a toss-up. Who should I trust more? Part of me wants to go with the Reign because Kai is, in my opinion, the #1 DPS in the lobby, but Toronto have the better overall team. It's a tough game to judge, but because it's opening week and I really don't know either of these teams very well yet, I'm going to defer to my power rankings, which means I am picking the Defiant to win a 3-2 thriller. It's another one of those games where I lack confidence. It's incredibly close. Like, it's one of those games that I'm expecting to get wrong no matter who I pick. Even if I went with Atlanta, I still think I'd be wrong in the end. But no matter what happens, this could be a really fun game to watch. It's a great way to end the week. But that's basically everything I have to say about the games for the week, so we're done here, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the first of many Season 4 predictions to come. It feels so great to bring this back. It was a long off season, and I was really starting to miss this series. It's been a long wait for all of us, so I'm sure all of you are just as excited as I am. If you enjoyed this video and you're hyped to see the Overwatch League return, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you're new and you want to stay up to date with all of my content. And of course, I encourage you to leave your own predictions and opinions on the game so we can continue the conversation down in the comments below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate your support so much, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.